Hello and welcome to the Brodie Blueprint, the podcast designed to help college students and young professionals navigate their career paths. Each episode we sit down with industry experts from finance, business, sports, education and more to uncover their journeys, daily experiences and lessons they've learned along the way. Whether you're exploring career options, looking for networking advice, or just curious about different industries, this is the place for you. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hello everybody, welcome to episode 16 of the Brodie Blueprint. Today I'm joined by the founder and CEO of the Boardroom Company, Miss Naomi Kent. Naomi, it's a pleasure to have you. How are you today?
Hi Jack, how you doing?
Good and very well.
Good.
Thank you very much for setting this up. This is our first in-person episode. It's really exciting, so I appreciate it a lot.
Wonderful, and here in Tampa, right?
I know, how funny.
Ybor City as well, of all places.
I know. So you've got a wealth of experience, a lot of it on boards. This is kind of your thing. So our main talking point today, I want to get to why boards are important, why you're on boards now, and all of that stuff. But what is the start of your story? How did you end up over here for a start? How did you end up being on boards? And how did you end up with the Boardroom Company?
Yeah, it just so happens we're both British here. So people might be confused. And definitely they were when we came
100%.
in. No, so I started out, my first job out of college was at a company that was all about boards of directors. So I sort of fell into it. I do remember, though, my interview with the company, and they said, you know, this is what we do. We build biographical profiles on board members, and this is what board members do. And I remember just like, I didn't have a clue what they were saying. I didn't know what they were talking about. I just nodded and said, yeah, I could do the job. And they gave me the job. I don't know.
Awesome.
It just so happened I got into it. So I was pretty young when I got into it. And then that company, which was British, ended up expanding into the United States, into New York. Okay. And I was really eager to go and live in New York. So I sort of put my hand up and asked a couple of times. I needed to ask a few times. They said no at first, but I just kept persisting and annoying them until they said yes. And then I moved to New York in 2006. So 2002 to 2006, I was in London working for that company. And then New York for quite a few years, then Chicago, and now down in Southwest Florida, which is like a paradise down here, right? In comparison with what we're used to back in the UK. So lots of sunshine, lots of palm trees, a few hurricanes thrown in as well.
Yeah, just a couple.
But I love it down here. So, but the whole thing started with that, one of the first companies that out of college. And just to kind of throw in a little story here, I got that job through one of my university kind of student friends.
Okay.
You know, he said one day, I remember he called me up and he said, have you got a job yet? And I was like, no, I don't, right? I just finished college and I was just kind of hanging out, doing whatever, I don't know, working part-time and having a good time. And he said, yeah, you should come work here. You know, we need people. And so when I talk to young people about building networks and, this is what it's all about. You don't realize it, but that first job, it seemed very small at the time. Like, it's just a job. I'm out of college. Didn't pay that much. Whatever. I didn't care, but I didn't really see how it would actually snowball and affect the rest of my life. So networks is a very big piece of advice that I give people about building those throughout your career. So,
and obviously networking is a huge part of this podcast and something that I've been learning myself over the last year. I've asked a lot of our guests so far, what's your advice to young people who don't know how to network? And I've started to realize that it's not that difficult. You just have to start, say something, introduce yourself, blah, blah, blah. What would your advice be as someone who started networking really young, was on board really young? What's your advice to young people trying to start networking?
I think you want to just meet people you like, right? Like I feel like you can't network or get to know people that you don't really get along with. You can't really
force it with someone if it's never going to, you're never going to like each other.
Exactly. So just try and find people that you like. Try and engage with people that are interesting. I do think it is important to have good people around you when you're growing in your career, because I think the people around you do impact where you go and they impact your decision making and everything else. So if they're all sort of saying, hey, you know, it's Thursday night, let's all go out and have a good time in Ybor City, which I'm sure it is.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, it does. But there could be another group of friends that are like, hey, Thursday night, we're all going to, work on our new business, right? And so, and by the way, I chose the Ybor City party one when I was that age. So, I can't really talk. But there's two types. And I think that you really do need to think about just getting to know people, hanging out with people you like, but also thinking of these people going in the direction I want to go in. Now, how do you just sort of walk up to someone? Yeah. I mean, I've been in events where I see something funny, right? Like I see they have certain drinks are out, or they have certain entertainment going on. And maybe there's something funny about it, right? So just walk up to someone and say, you know, hey, what do you think of the singer? Or what do you think of these, you know, this decoration in here? Or, hey, did you have an issue getting here?
Yeah, just anything you can bring up.
It's really that simple. And I think if that person isn't really open to that, then they're probably not someone you want to hang around with.
Exactly. Anyway, yeah, exactly.
And I think if you bring a positive attitude, a smile, right? People want to be around you,
Exactly.
right? So
That's half the battle.
it's not that difficult. Yeah.
I think as well, some people don't realise that obviously you're not going to network in Ybor City on a night out as much as you might somewhere else, obviously. But I think a lot of people expect these networking conversations to be really serious and, you know, suit and tie and you're sitting in a boardroom talking about it or something. I found that they're actually really casual a lot of the time. A lot of the networking conversations I've had have been 15-minute phone calls, 15-minute coffees and stuff. So I think there's a lot of value in young people understanding that you don't have to be stressed about them. They're very easy conversations. Even the way that you and I met, it's been very casual all the time. This is quite casual, even now. So I think it's not something to be scared of. Definitely not something to be scared of. But I think it's also something you have to start younger than, you know, wait until you're midway through your career to start as well.
And to your point, I don't think that you should go out to speak to people and tell them all about you and your history.
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
What do you
right?
get from that as well?
But what is interesting is if you have a conversation about something that you have in common,
Yeah.
or hey, what's going on with the Brodie Blueprint, right? You've got this amazing podcast.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. What's working for you? I have a podcast. Let's see why, you know, hey, what microphones do you use, right? We were just asking that. And so, you know, you can actually connect with someone and build trust, because that's what you need to do at the beginning is build trust just through something that you have in common and some kind of connection. And so I say to people, rather than, and if you're looking for a job or you're looking to get on a board, don't tell people everything about you. Show them, right? So again, let's say you're a managing director of a bank, right, or something. You want to start maybe talking to them about finance, asking them questions and say, hey, you know, how do you deal with this? And how's your team coping with the new changes in this, that, and the other? And actually consult almost, right? And talk to people about things that are going on that you've seen. And I also think that you have to take genuine interest in people.
100%.
You actually have to want to get to know somebody,
you can't
right?
just do it for the sake of doing it. There's no value to it, is there?
Exactly. And sure, you'll find when you learn more about someone, you actually learn something yourself. 100%. So it's all connected.
100%. So I want to get into boards as much as possible because this has been your life, it seems like, from looking at your LinkedIn and speaking to you. Boards is your thing. You got on boards a lot younger than what I expect people to be on boards. To me, it's something you do. Honestly, I thought it was kind of your last role before you retire. It's an older person thing, and you've been on them for such a long time. What did you find interesting about being a young person on a board? What was weird? What was it like being that young person on a board?
So there are lots of different types of boards, and I totally empathize with why you think boards are for these, you know, older people who have, you know, been CEOs and things, because that's what you see in the news, right?
Exactly,
you see Tim Cook sits on the board of Nike, and you see all these people on these big boards, and they're all your parents or your grandparents' age, right? So you sort of think, well, that's much later on. But there are a number of different types of boards that you can get on early to get experience, to build leadership skills, and to also start building your network. Much easier to build it there. You don't have to walk up to someone and ask them about something. It's a much more fluid way of getting to know people. My first board, I was 28 years old, and I joined the board of a not-for-profit. It was actually a membership organization of professional people in New York.
Cool.
And they also had part of the organization that supported underserved teens in certain communities. So they did after-school programs. So it was kind of a bit of both, which was actually worked for me. And I was probably one of the younger people on the board, but I was a very active volunteer. I was very passionate about the organization. I loved it was my first sort of year in New York, and I was really excited about being there, and I wanted to meet people, so I was willing to sort of take the time and to do it. But I think, you know, a not-for-profit is a great place to start. There are also strategic advisory boards, which are groups of people, possibly even a one person who does the work, but groups of people who advise a CEO on a particular matter.
Okay.
So, for example, you might be on the advisory board of a podcast organization. I'm going to talk about podcasting today, but or an advisory board. You said you played soccer professionally and things, so it could be an advisory board of a soccer team, and you advise on how to set it up, or how to coach, or how to whatever, right? And they kind of come to you when they need specialized advice. So I see a lot of people, their first board tends to be one of those two.
Okay.
And my advice is always, and you said retirement, you're spot on, but actually a lot of those people that are on boards in retirement, they started 30 years before.
Really?
So you want to start as young as possible. And you don't need to rush it, right? It's going to take quite a few years for you to get to that, Microsoft board or,
I would guess so.
Nike board. But we all aspire to be there. But you got to start maybe on an advisory board, maybe on a non-profit board. These are all good options.
And how can young people go about looking for these boards? Is it finding something you're passionate about and finding something you've got a good knowledge about and kind of showing your value to this company and showing your value to a board where they might invite you on? Or what's this process like?
It's kind of all of the above.
Okay.
I'll share some advice with you that if I wish I had known, right, 20 odd years ago. When you think about a non-profit board or any kind of board, there are 3 questions you have to ask yourself. One is the cause, is it something I can get behind, right? So, for example, you're into soccer, you're into sports. You'd probably be like, well, that kind of makes sense for me to be part of a not-for-profit or an organization that has an athletic,
twist or
component to it, because that's where my heart is, and if you suddenly sat on the board of I don't know, Save the Dolphins, and you're like, well, I can't even swim or something, right? That may not, and people
doesn't work as well.
Yeah, and you will kind of lose interest in it too.
Okay.
So you want to be in something you really care about. The second thing is this organization going to actually help me in my career?
Okay.
So you may think that saving the dolphins is a wonderful idea, but your job has absolutely nothing to do with it. I don't think you should sit on more than one nonprofit board. So if you're only going to sit on one nonprofit board, make it count, right? Okay. And make it that it is actually going to work for you in your firm and what you're trying to do in your career. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you are you're part of an investment bank, or you're in financial services, any kind of financial services. There are not-for-profit organizations that teach financial literacy to kids or people or whatever it might be, right? To help them get mortgages or whatever. There are also organizations that have more of a slant of kind of helping people through troubled times with loans and things like that. So there's a connection, right? You can kind of see that there's a connection. Or there are industry associations. Right. So you have things like the American Financial Services Association. I don't know if that exists, but that kind of a thing where people from your industry gather together at events for education. Guess what? You could be on a board. Let's say you're at ABC company. You could be on a board and there's JP Morgan sitting there and Bank of Montreal and Bank of this and Bank of that. You would never be in a room with these people.
If you weren't on that board.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so you suddenly are kind of around these people, and you're also who knows, you may get your next job through these people, right? So I've seen that. And then the third thing you want to ask yourself is, are the people on the board at a level that I aspire to be at, right? So if you're the smartest person in the room or the most senior person in the room, you're going to be doing all the work, right? And you're going to look around you and go, well, this is great. I'll be everyone's mentor, but no one's going to be, I don't get a mentor. Yeah, exactly. And you need that if it's your first nonprofit. So take a look around the room. Are these people kind of in line with where you see yourself? And there's one other thing I want to mention. There's something called a junior board.
Right.
And that's for people sort of under the age of 35. Yep. So you can have really big boards like United Way, American Red Cross, and a lot of them will have local junior boards. Okay. Those are great boards to get on as well. Okay. Again, you got to get yourself into a position of success. But most of the time, the way that you get on these boards, first of all, go volunteer. Okay. So figure out, is it the right board, first of all, then go volunteer, and then go talk to one of the board members. Tell them. right?
You're interested.
I'm a big proponent of telling people when you want to do something.
Yeah,
it was
okay.
like this,
Yeah,
right? It was like
literally,
you and I just connected, and I said, "Hey, I really want to do it in person in Tampa. Let's do it together."
Here we are,
right?
6 weeks later.
Otherwise, I'd still be sitting at home thinking about it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah,
you have
completely.
to kind of tell people what you want and what you want to get done, and then you have to take action.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the course that I would take: is figure out what's right for you. Is it good for your career? Is it the right people? And then go volunteer, and then just hustle, right? Pure hustle. Get in there. Yeah.
Have you ever had any instances where the people on your board have been not necessarily subpar, but not exactly the level that you wanted them to be at?
I would say the number one complaint that I hear from board members is people who are not prepared for board meetings.
Wow, okay.
So, you got your paperwork here. You could have a stack of papers, right, that you have to go through, and you have to read all about the financials, and you've got to make your notes, and you have to have your questions ready. There are some people, they just come walking on in. All right, what's going on? Yes,
really?
okay,
Wow.
good, yep, vote. And they probably don't even know what they're voting on. Yes, it happens a lot. And it happens because people are busy. They overextend themselves. They sit on 4 or 5 nonprofit boards, plus they have a job, plus they have this. But they're good people. They want to do good in the community, and they want to donate. But maybe they're not quite as tuned in to what's going on the board. So I think that is probably the number one thing that I would recommend is just be prepared and be ready for it. Yeah.
I want to touch on something else I found in your experience before we go back to boards. Would I be right in saying you worked with the British American Business Council in Chicago?
I do,
You did,
I'm
yes.
the president there, yeah.
Still?
Yes, I am.
Wow,
Yep.
awesome. Sorry, I thought when you moved down you
That's
stopped.
why I go back there a lot for the events
awesome.
and
How
things.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have one in Central Florida, and I have a connection there. And you talked about how you're in these rooms with JP Morgan and Chase and brands like that. With the British Council in Chicago, what's that been like? Has there been a lot of a lot of exposure to these companies? Is it that easy?
I think that when you're part of a nonprofit that is a professional network, it gives you a huge advantage over just being a member, right?
Okay.
You get visibility at events. You can bring friends, and you can kind of encourage people. I mean, I do that all the time. I say to clients and prospects, people I'm working with, I say, "Hey, would you like to come to an event?" Awesome. I mean, these events are great. I'm sure you've been to the one in here.
Yeah.
It's like Orlando area, isn't it? It's the middle of and because there are such great people there, you look good, right? You're not sort of just inviting them out to go and meet a bunch of random people. Yeah, these are executives and board members and things like that. So I would say, personally, for me, a professional network was the right move. That was the right type of nonprofit because it actually helped me network, and then it helped me bring in my clients and get them engaged. So yeah, I think and everybody I meet thinks that either they have an advantage or a disadvantage.
Right, okay.
And often when you're a foreigner in a country, you might think, oh, I'm at a disadvantage. I didn't go to school here.
Yeah.
I don't have an alumni group. I don't have all these things. But I say, listen, work your strengths, right? And so if you're British, or you're from Hungary, or you're from France, or whatever, you find your people, find a place, or you're in a specific industry, right? Yeah. Find your people. And that connection is really quite strong, I feel like. If I approach someone and I say, and they're in a pretty senior level position, and I say, hey, I think we're both British, I will always get a response.
Awesome.
And if I go, and we talked about the triathlons too, so I often go onto LinkedIn and I try and look up people who have done Ironman or who have done long distance
racing. More
racing.
things in common.
Reach out to them, always get a response. They're like, oh, great, fellow Ironman, So you've got to think, don't think about why your disadvantages, right, of why you can't connect with these people. Try and figure out how you can, and there's always a way.
Wow, that's really valuable advice, actually. I think, like you said, a lot of people always look at the negatives, where really is however small your advantage is, you can still use it in a way to benefit yourself and benefit your career as well. So that's cool. Networking groups, you have talked about boards that sound obviously very serious boards, non-profit executives, whatever it is. We now have the Brits of the Bay group here, which to me is a bit more of a casual setup. Our first meeting was very relaxed, everyone's very easygoing. Is there still as much value in casual groups like that as well?
I think so. I think actually some of the more casual ones is where people have got their guards down, right? So if I always think if you're an executive in a company and you walk into a conference and you've got this badge on, right? It says so-and-so, CEO of this. you're just sort of like, oh, here we go, right? Everyone wants to come up to you. Can we have a meeting? They want to sell you something. And you can tell it's not very authentic, right? But if you don't have a badge and you just walk in a room and everyone's having a beer and no one's sort of doing that, again, that elevator pitch, where do you work? It's just like hey, where are you from? What's going on? How long have you been in Tampa, right? And then suddenly they give you their card at the end and you're like, oh, that was the CEO of so-and-so company, right? So awesome. I think sometimes you get more openness there, and you get the opportunity to actually connect with people that otherwise you might not. But my other story about Brits of the Bay, which I think is, and by the way, this is a brand new group.
Yes, I was going to say there's no information out there at all. Yeah,
I think we have a LinkedIn group at this point. But my point of this is create your own network. Yeah. People say this to me all the time. They're like, oh, I'm in this town. There's not a lot of people. Create it.
Just start.
Start. That's right. And I was living down in Naples in Florida, and I moved there sort of more permanently in 2020. And of course, no one was around. There wasn't anyone around. And I thought, well, how do I find people? So I did exactly that. I actually just partnered with people. So I said, I met one person and they seemed cool. They seemed to have a good network. I said, okay, well, let's go for dinner. You bring 2 friends. I'll bring 2 friends.
Yeah, and there you go.
And we've just
already.
Kept building and building.
Oh,
and
cool.
We just had a dinner recently. There were 8 people. I did the same thing in Chicago recently. We had 14 people. I mean, everyone I invited wanted to go. So it's
cool.
You actually can leverage a lot by just doing something small in your community and creating it yourself, right? So,
such an awesome idea. Obviously, and I don't want to spend too much time on the Brits of the Bay because it's something that impacts us a lot, and maybe people watch it not as much. Yeah, should have on the board. Obviously, I spoke to William McKissick. He started it alongside you and Hannah, and he kind of talks about how there's a bit of a glass ceiling with the Brits of the Bay. You've got 30 odd members now. He says there could be hundreds, and God knows how long. What for you, as someone who started this group, what is the plan? What is the long-term plan for a group like that?
Yeah, I think whenever you start a professional network or you start anything, you should just really take it one step at a time, right? And I think a professional network, it's all about the people and the quality of the people. And I'm not going to name names, but there are some very large networks out there that deteriorated over time because the quality of the people decreased. And so in the beginning, some of these networks appear to be very elite and very professional. And then you go to an event, you're like, this is not what I thought it was, because they want to build, they want to grow. I mean, every company, it's capitalism, right? Like you want more members, you want them to be paying more, and then you can provide more, and etc. Then you have to, hire more staff and everything else. We're not at that stage yet.
Not quite.
We don't have any staff. It's all volunteer. But no, you see my point. It's like it's hard. I think when you get too big as a network, it starts to dilute that quality. And so I think, again, with what we're trying to do with Brits of the Bay is professional people, British, living in, or at least you don't have to be like born there, because I wasn't actually born there.
You're a traitor.
Yeah, I know, right?
Imposter.
But I do have a passport, I promise. So yeah, we need to see your passport on the way in. But no, like there has to be some affiliation there, and it's just a bit of fun. This is not a serious.
More than anything, that's what the meetings are. They're fun.
It's a bit of fun, and I know. William was saying to me, he was like, "Oh, I just like having a bit of a laugh, with British people." And that's the same if you got together with your alumni group. I kind of see it as sort of the same
idea,
thing. Yeah, and we don't have alumni groups here because a lot of us went to, university back in England, or in the UK. But no, I think it's important. I think what we want to do is really just build a great group of people and kind of see where it goes.
Absolutely.
I'm sure William's got big plans.
I bet he does,
I'm sure he's got big plans. But I'm not aware of them so far. But no, I think it's just important that we continue to have we continue to have events.
Just
so
keep, even once a month, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's all we're going to do at the moment, and then just see where it goes. Right.
Awesome. It's exciting. That's some great networking advice in there as well. Thank you very much, Naomi. More onto the Boardroom Company. So I've done my own research, but for the viewers watching and anyone from my channel watching, what is the Boardroom Company and why did you start it?
So the Boardroom Company is education, knowledge, coaching, mentoring, advising on how to build a board career. And it's for anyone from any age, any background. Obviously, there are certain types of backgrounds and experiences that lend towards certain types of boards.
Yep.
And so that's kind of part of what I do is I help people figure out what is the direction that they should go in. And if you're ambitious enough and you're thinking about it, just come talk to me and I can help you see if there's something there. Awesome. And then really branding, Like anything, if you were going to go get a new job or you were going to pivot in your career, you have to sort of think about, well, what does my target audience want me to say? And what is this role that I'm actually going for? I would say the biggest shift that happens is, let's say you've been an executive, you've been working, you've been grinding, you've been spending, hundreds of hours every month, like working and doing the job, and you make good money and you've got this amazing title. And then they say, right, we need you to be on a board. A lot of what happens is that person just tells you about who they are as an executive.
Right.
And you got to do a total shift in your brain and say, well, actually this role is on a board. So what do they want from me?
Yeah, okay.
And it's not everything you've ever done. In fact, it's a lot of what you've done is not relevant. It is in the sense of, I hope you've done that.
Yeah.
But it's not what's
not
required.
directly relevant.
Yeah,
okay.
it's not what's required in there. I always give the analogy of tennis and pickleball, right? We're talking sports here. So, if you play tennis, but you show up to a pickleball court with a tennis racket talking about how great you are at tennis, no one's going to want you on the team.
Yeah, no one cares.
That's exactly how it goes. So it's very similar. There are a lot of similarities, but if you show up with the wrong brand, saying the wrong thing, no one's going to want you on their team. So what I generally do is help them understand where their direction is, how to say it correctly, and then I create a bio for them, a board resume, whatever they need. We do their LinkedIn. And then we help them figure out who in their network is a really good fit. And again, for jobs, it's the same thing. You're more likely to get a job through someone you know well, not through the random person you just meet, once at a conference. So I really heavily focus on who are the people that will kind of go to war for you, and who are the people that will go and say good words about you. Okay. Let's start with them, and then let's work our way down. And people are usually pretty successful in a short period of time because they have a great reputation, they have great relationships, they just haven't gone out to have those conversations. And again, it's all about bringing intention with it as well. And it wasn't it the white Mercedes, like every time someone says a white Mercedes, now you see them everywhere. It's the same thing.
100%.
Now you're just talking about boards all the time. Suddenly there are all these board opportunities. They're everywhere. They were always there. You just
weren't looking in the right places.
You weren't asking, you weren't looking, you weren't telling anyone. So
when someone comes to you, say they've had an established career, they might be an executive or they're in that kind of realm anyway, what kind of timeframes are you setting out to get them on a board? Is it within a month? Is it 6 months? Is it within the year? What were the timeframes like for these?
It really depends. I've seen people get onto boards as fast as 6 weeks.
Wow. Okay.
And I've seen people get onto boards in 2 years, right? And it depends on the
Just
board.
varies.
Yeah, and some of them are a little harder. Some of them take longer. I was working with a group at a bank recently, and it was a 10-week program. And by about week 7, 2 of them were already in interviews.
Wow.
So, and there were only 20 of them on that group. Wow. So 2 out of 20, but they were really out. I mean, they wanted to get it done, right? Okay. And so I think it's a combination of, do you want to get it done? Are you going to put the work in? You're going to take my advice, and do you have a good reputation and good relationships? And if the answer is yes to all of those things, then it shouldn't take too long. What
is there challenges when so you ask these questions, find out what they've done in their career, what their skills are? If there's an individual with a reputation that's maybe not perfect, there's maybe been some bumps in the road, does this make it a bit more difficult, or how do you approach that?
Depends on the type of bumps in the road. When you're younger, if it's like, I don't know, what do you mean, you got laid off or something?
Yeah,
or
maybe you're looking for a board that's got somebody on it that has a negative opinion of you.
That's going to be tough.
Okay.
That's going to be tough, yes.
That's always a hard thing.
That's why reputation is so important. Okay. I wouldn't burn a bridge really ever in my career.
In business, okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I would try and avoid that as much as possible. This might be an interesting couple of stories. So I've met a lot of people who are in the sort of older, they're sort of the furthest end of their careers. Okay. They're kind of finishing up their career. Yep. And I've seen one particular woman had been fired from a CEO role because there was fraud going on in the business.
Oh, dear.
Impossible to get on a board.
Yeah,
it will be. I just told her. I just said, it's going to be impossible.
But does this person still come to you expecting you to be able to turn this around and get them on a board?
I think she was more asking, like, is it this bad, right? Okay. I'll tell you another really funny story. So this was in London.
Right.
And I was this older gentleman. He'd been in banking. and he had left banking.
Right.
And he said, I'm really thinking about getting on a board. I said, oh, that's great. Tell me more about you. He said, well, might be better. Just Google me.
Oh, God.
I thought, oh, gosh.
Oh, dear.
So I Googled him, and it came up, and the picture of him on the front of the Sun newspaper.
Oh, my
If
God.
anyone doesn't know, this is the tabloid of tabloids,
Probably
right?
the front of paper you don't want to be on.
You do not want to be on the front of the Sun. And it was him, and there was a picture of there was a picture of his face,
Right.
And then what looked like a company office party, but it was just a stock picture.
Okay,
It wasn't the
right.
actual picture, but
Yeah.
it was a company party, and it said, investment banker, gets naked at office party or whatever. And I said to him, did you really get naked? Because that was the only question I had.
Obviously,
I said, did you really? He goes, no, I had my underwear on. So he said to me, do you think I
Oh
can
my
get on a board with
gosh.
this?
I would guess not, sir.
Actually, maybe not a publicly traded company.
Yeah.
I agree. Public
Okay.
company, absolutely not. But as a banker, maybe it's a private company that needs a capital raise. Maybe
Maybe.
it's a family-owned business and he knows them. I said to him, you probably got a chance. I think you got a chance, even if you were caught with his underwear on. He did have
Yes,
underwear on.
he wasn't
not
completely
naked.
naked,
Yeah,
yes.
that was not true.
That was...
So I've seen on the funny side, and then
Yeah.
I've seen on the more serious side where it's actually really affected people's careers,
Wow.
and it does impact them. But the parts of it that I think you don't see
Mm-hmm.
are, let's say somebody's in a room and they say, we really need a board director, and they need to have these 3 skills, and they think, oh, Naomi's that, and then they think, I'm not going to mention her because I don't want to recommend her, right?
Oh,
Or
wow, okay, I see.
the 3 this person lines up, but they're just not a good person.
There's not a good fit or something, what
or
it
you
is.
just think the fit isn't right because I don't know. Maybe when you show up late, maybe when you show up, you're not
Yeah.
looking like an executive. You look disheveled. And would I introduce this person? Well, probably not.
No.
Or you don't speak well, or you've made a fool of yourself. Well, there was people that get drunk at the holiday party, right?
There's always one.
Yeah, you're thinking, well, he didn't make a good impression that time. Maybe I won't. So you actually don't know about all the opportunities you missed.
You're missing, yeah.
So I think that's a piece that I think we just all need to be aware of. And listen, I don't think you should be fake if you want to get naked at an office party.
If that's
go
your
for
thing,
it.
I guess.
Yeah, go for it. But you do have to think about the consequences.
Yeah.
And when you're in a professional environment, it's your career, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can go and actually even today you can't really go and mess around too much outside
Not
because
really,
people have
no.
got cameras,
They'll
right?
be everywhere, yeah.
And how many people are you seeing in the news now? It's
Gosh,
like the CEO of so and so is was doing something on
One at the
camera. and
concert as well
somebody
recently.
found him. Yeah, the concert.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I think you just have to be careful because there are cameras everywhere.
Surrounded.
Yeah.
Is this part of the idea of building your personal brand and your professional brand, that it's something you can start from like your entry-level jobs and it's something you should keep all the way through your career, that something I do now could bite me in the backside further down the line?
Yeah, absolutely. I think listen, I think consistency is important.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you show up one day in one way and then you show up another day in another way, I think that's more damaging
Okay.
than
Just sticking
just
to-
a mediocre brand, right?
Right,
All the
okay.
time, right? You don't like a mediocre brand can just be a normal person,
Yeah,
right? You don't
I
need
was
to be
gonna say.
you don't need to be dressed and immaculate
At all
at all
times.
time. Yeah, but I will say this: there are some of the most impressive business people I've met. Have made a huge impression. They've got executive presence. They speak well. They didn't start out like that. I'm
No, it's
sure
something they've
everyone learns.
Molded
but,
as they go as well.
yeah, but I think if you're a young person and you're thinking about your career, you should learn like good manners in meetings. You should have good eye contact with people in meetings. You should have a firm handshake. Get the basics right, and then you'll learn the rest as you go and learn from people. Watch people and watch what they do. But yeah, I think it's definitely important that when you're around people, you make the right impression.
Talking about young people as well and starting something early in your career, the first time we spoke, you were planning on rolling out kind of your younger person program within the Boardroom Company. What's been some differences with the younger people looking to get on boards and this retired age, the older people that are on boards? What's the difference between these people?
So the younger people are trying to, I think, in my opinion, it's a slower process, right?
Right,
They're
okay.
trying to get experience. They want to give back to their communities. They want to learn leadership skills. They want to network. And you can do it while you're working, and and maybe I have plenty of people I know even have kids and they serve on these nonprofit boards. So it is possible. It's not a huge amount of time. It's not like another job, right? When and these are low stakes. Let's call them low stakes, lowish stakes, right? These are not-for-profit organizations. You're volunteering your time.
Yeah.
When you get to a certain level and you're looking for corporate boards, which are paid boards, I think at that point you are these types of boards. It's very high stakes.
Okay.
So in some cases you could get sued. There is insurance, so you're not like getting sued personally. But the decisions that you make impact people's lives, people's jobs. I mean, it's the same thing at a nonprofit. You're still impacting people's jobs because people work
potentially
for
a bigger scale. And
exactly. And I think that the interview process is a lot more rigorous. They do really background checks and all kinds of things. So again, if you've got any kind of, you've been in jail or something like that, getting on a board's going to be really tough.
Tricky.
Yeah, they're going to find that. And all kinds of things like that. So I think younger people, for me, it's an absolute must. You must do it. Building your skills in a nonprofit. I always think the company I have worked for have always been small to medium size, and they do some training here and there, but there's no big training programs. And so I was often sitting there going, I kind of want to learn something. How am I going to do this myself?
Yeah.
And I'm not a big classroom person. I don't like sitting in classrooms that much. So I thought, how can I do this and also have a bit of fun? So that was why I got into nonprofits, because I wanted to build skills, and it did leadership skills, networks, etc. And I'm very grateful for the experience I've had. And actually, I have my podcast. There's a bunch of CEOs I've interviewed who have said, I attribute a lot of my success to the nonprofit boards.
Wow.
Yes,
Okay. So it's really
because they learned things in the nonprofit boardroom that they then used those. They were like, shit, they did it for the first time there, not in their executive role, because you do it there and you mess it up. There's a big problem. Yeah, exactly. But so that's why I say it's kind of low risk area for you to really trial it out.
Where you can kind of make mistakes and learn on your feet a little bit more than having these huge consequences.
And then as you get older, these corporate boards require a lot more. They're a lot more competitive. There are hardly any roles available. You've got to hustle and fight for those. You have to have the right brand. You have to know the right people. But hopefully, again, if you're a young person listening into this and you're thinking, well, one day that'll be me, I would say the biggest piece of advice I would say is build networks. Because, at some point, as you get more and more senior, there are less and less roles.
Yeah, of course.
And so you need someone to recommend you.
To have your back and say good things about you.
Right. And there comes a time when you're going to be competing for a role, and you and the next guy have got exactly the same backgrounds. Why are they going to choose you? Because someone in the company says, hey, I know Jack. He's a good guy. I've known him for 10 years. Yeah. He's consistent, shows up, talks well. You're always consistently impressing people. Okay, maybe we go out and we mess around and we have a good time and we talk about our failures, but that's just life. So, getting those recommendations later on are really going to be helpful for really jobs, boards.
That's something that small can be the difference as well in such a competitive world. That's interesting.
That's right.
I was speaking with a CFO recently who I know and network with, and he was telling me a lot about ego and how he's seen ego kind of ruin careers, and it's just kind of ruins businesses at times. I think there might be an old-fashioned perspective of board members as some of the highest egos. What have you found teaching and educating these people? Is ego a difficulty? Is ego something that people have to kind of, eat that slice of humble pie and put their ego to the side when you want to get on a board? Or how does ego come into things?
So I have a list of the top 10 attributes of highly successful board members.
Awesome.
And I can share it with you, so you can share it with your audience. But one of them is actually that they leave their ego at the door. Now, they don't all do that, right? But a lot of it is about leaving your ego at the door. So what you can find on a lot of boards is highly successful people who have run major businesses. Right. And so when you get in a room with them, they might be the boss in their other boardroom, right? When they're the CEO. Yeah. Now they're not the boss. And so there's a fine line that they have to sort of manage, which is, I'm not the boss, but I have to oversee a CEO. So I have to oversee decisions, and I have to be careful. So I think there are obviously people who are very successful and know it, But I think one of the greatest skills that they have, the good ones have, is that they don't need to shout about their achievements and everything they've ever done.
Yeah.
They're actually pretty humble people. And like I said, when you're in a room with them, they're unlikely to sit there and go, hey, Jack, let me tell you all about my history and everything I've ever done.
Yeah.
Instead, they'll start asking you about your business or asking you questions. They want to learn about you, right? They want to learn more about who you are so that they can then maybe provide solutions or advise. Like, I think they're just in the seat and the role of advising, and they take genuine interest in people. And so they would rather do that. They find that more fun than talking about themselves. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think to your point, there are some people on boards who do have big egos, and you get what they call it boardroom dynamics, which is where you kind of have people that butt heads a little bit.
Some boardroom politics.
Yeah,
nice.
exactly. They call it dynamics in the boardroom. But so you're going to get that just generally anyway. So you do have to have a lot of confidence in yourself. So if someone says, I think that terrible idea, right? You got to come back with why. You got to bring data. You got to bring, right. You can't just be like, well, yourself. I think it's this, So you have to be very careful working around people like that. But I think generally, what I see, and again, I'm interviewing a lot of these board members, is I just see a lot of a humble confidence, right, about them.
Awesome. With people that have come to you to get on these boards and get educated, do a lot of them struggle to leave their ego at the door?
Yes, they do. Yeah, they do. So, and actually, there's often a struggle for them to think about themselves as a board member and not be too focused on the kind of detail of what they've done and all their big achievements. Yeah. Quick funny story. There was a woman that I was working with, and she said, she goes, I was writing her bio, and she said, hey, my book's not in there. And I don't remember the name of the book, and I'm not going to say it in case somebody's listening, but it was something like High Heels and Coffee or something, or like High Heels and Tea, right?
Okay.
And I went, what's this book about? It's about, a woman who's doing this and, does it. And I said, this has nothing to do with boards at all. There's no connection here.
Right.
The book's not going in.
Of course.
And this was just, I can imagine. You spend probably $10,000, $15,000 writing a book, right?
5-10 years writing a book.
Yeah, and producing it. You're probably not making much money from it, right? So you're trying to promote it or whatever. But it just wasn't relevant. So I'm like, that's not going in. I'm sorry, it's not going in the bio. Yeah. So, she's really disappointed. And I can see why. But so I have to do a lot of that, which is, this isn't relevant. But this was a huge achievement in my career. Doesn't translate to the board.
Us here.
Yeah. Or like people say, I managed, 1,000 people. 1,000 people sort of reported into me. Boards have no reports. Yeah. There's no one reporting.
That doesn't help you in terms of looking for something like this.
Right. Leadership skills, great. But tell me what kind of a leader you are. That I'd rather know your values as a leader than the number of people you managed.
Interesting. So. Okay. I do want to be conscious of time. I've got one more thing I want to bring up before we kind of draw to a close. We've talked about a lot about athletics, sports for both of us. You've done Ironmans, ultramarathons, whatever it is. How have the skills you've learned there translated into business, or how have the skills you've learned in business translated into your athletics?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of doing sports, actually, or doing hobbies outside of a career. So if anyone's listening and they're like, all I do is work, that's a big problem. Yeah. And that's going to come back to bite you as well, because there are going to be good days at work and bad days at work. How do you balance that? You've got to have something else that you're kind of working toward. And so for me, it was always exercise. It was always sports. And then I got into, I ran a couple of marathons, and then someone said to me, hey, you should do Ironman. So, all right, I'll do Ironman. So started training for that.
As you do, casually.
Yeah, started training for that. Loved every minute of it. I will say this, that I think how it helped me is I think we all have a pain threshold. And if you don't push that threshold up, it stays pretty low.
Right.
And so, again, if some stress comes to you or some problems come to you at work, if you're not pushing the limits of what you can do on a daily basis, you're going to find it really hard to cope with just the smallest and tiniest of problems that are going on. So I felt that pushing myself and pushing my limits was always good for me, physically, mentally. And it helped me with managing stress just in general, because it was like, well, No one's dying. No one's falling off a bike, right?
No.
Or no one's drowning in the swim or whatever. Or, and I see people doing, climbing, people doing base jumping and all these things. Like, I'm telling you, you're on another level at that point because or scuba diving, you're constantly, how am I not going to die, right? Whereas at work, I sent the wrong email out. Okay, well, you sent the wrong email. No one's dead, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, you look bad, but let's try and correct it now. So, thinking with a clear head when you have problems is how you train when you do some of these kind of more high risk kind of athletic things and also competition. You're going to lose. And you're going to feel terrible, but you're going to get back up and you're going to go and try and win again, right? And I 100%. Think, and that's why I think sports for kids is really good and competition is very good for kids as well because it just teaches them that you're going to have to get back up, right? Life's not, you don't win anything, actually.
Really.
I actually didn't win anything.
Got to keep going regardless, yeah.
Exactly. So I would say, it's helpful for stress and managing and thinking through problems and problem solving. And you get to know yourself pretty well.
I bet.
Training for hours and hours and hours alone is a lonely task.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Naomi, it's been amazing talking to you. It really has. To draw to a close, I know you've given us a lot of advice throughout this episode. It's been really great. What's your number one piece of advice for young people starting out in their career?
Number one piece of advice is, I would say probably from my personal experience, I think building good relationships with people within the company is so important too. Being consistent helps you to build relationships as well. I never said no to a project. I never went, I'm too busy for that. I can't do that. I just threw myself into everything.
I just made time for it.
Yeah. So when you build good relationships by being able to produce and being able to deliver.
Yeah.
So and I know there's a lot of talk about how you should push back and you should do this. That was never how it worked for me. I always just said, I'd love to learn. Let me do that. And then I found because I put my hand up, then the next time they didn't ask, they just came to me and went, hey, do you want to get involved in this really cool project? Or do you want to come to this meeting? And now suddenly I was sitting in a room with CEOs and I was, in my 20s and awesome. But they wanted me there because I had been to the last one. And, so I think opportunities opened up because I was a little bit more forthcoming. And then that helped me to build relationships internally. But yeah, it's hard. It is hard. But you also got to have a bit of fun with it as well and enjoy getting to know people and make sure you're working with great people. That's the biggest thing.
Awesome. Naomi, thank you very much again.
Thanks, Jack. Good to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Obviously, thank you, Naomi, for having us. Tampa Creative Studios, thanks very much for having us. Check out the Boardroom Company. Some great podcasts on there. It's much more information as well. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks again. Well, that's all for today, folks. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and were also able to gain some valuable insights into a potential career. Please head over to Instagram and TikTok and follow us. That's the Brodie Blueprint. And also don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube as well. If you guys have any guests that you want to see on the podcast or any industries that you want to see guests appear from, please let us know. Until next time, guys. See you later.